It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. It's the Jill on Money show. This is the program that attempts to take the mystery out of your financial life. And I am Jill Schlesinger. Mark Talercio is running the show from a remote location. And we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? If you have a financial question, gosh, we'd love to hear from you. All you have to do is send an email. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. That's askjill@jillonmoney.com. Also want to remind you to hop onto the old website, jillonmoney.com. We happen to have a brand new section because Mark is really a genius. I asked for it and he makes it happen. Hop onto the Jill on Money website, and there you can obviously watch different stuff that's been on television. You can read all the content that I am producing. You can listen to past shows, check out the resources. Of course, you can sign up for the newsletter, which is free. But more importantly, check out the Furry Fan Club. That's right, folks. If you send us a question about your financial life, don't forget to include a picture of your pet. This is a new initiative. It started with the podcast. And so Mark made it happen. I am going to put my lovely animules on the site. It will be a bit of a breakout for them. And I've really kept them under wraps because, I don't want overexposure, Mark. They're too cute for words. All right, so check it out, jillonmoney.com. Let's go and get to a question. This is from Cherry, who writes, "Hi, Jill and Mark. I listen to the podcast during my daily walks, especially over the last several months. You are a calming influence in these unusual times." So just a little note, Cherry is referring to our daily podcast. So you're listening to this on the weekend. It's great. This is our terrestrial radio show. Fantastic. We are so grateful that you're with us. If you would like to hear our daily podcast, you have to go subscribe immediately. So the podcast is called Jill on Money. So check it out. Okay, let's get back to Cherry. Cherry says, "I'm 59. My husband is 60. And we are fortunate to still work full time, not impacted by COVID to date. I received notice a few weeks ago from a former employer that I have until the end of July to decide if I want to start taking my pension in September 2020 as a lump sum, $340,000, or an annuity starting in September of this year. I can also do nothing and draw upon it when I retire. However, the lump sum option may not be offered again. The annuity has all the usual options: life with 60 or 120 months certain, some survivor benefits. With this offer, the annuity option at 60 months certain is $520 less per month if I do nothing now and elect the same 60 months certain option at age 65. Okay. Both of them are going to retire at age 62. They max out their 401ks. He's got 250 grand. She has 1.1 million. Okay. They each have an IRA and a Roth, another 200,000. So we're talking about $1.5 million, basically, a little bit more. They'll both be eligible for Social Security. They make $230,000 a year. They've got financially independent kids. They've got 60 grand left on their mortgage, 12 grand on a car, no other debt. 150 grand in cash, mutual funds, savings, bonds. We are blessed to be healthy so far. On the one hand, it is tempting to take control of the money right now, roll it into the IRA, and have the ability to pass down any remaining money to our heirs when we die. On the other hand, having a guaranteed income stream each month for life is also attractive. And then there's the do nothing until age 65 option, and that would draw the higher monthly amount. Okay, one more variable to throw into the equation. The offer is actually for two different divisions of the former employer and therefore two separate pensions, split roughly 50-50. All the numbers above combine the two, but the decision for each pension is completely independent of the other. I've researched and read the prior responses you provided on this topic. I would appreciate your input given the specifics of our particular situation. Thanks so much, Cherry. Well, I'm sort of torn on this myself. There's a part of me that thinks there could be a very interesting opportunity that you have with receiving this pension. I don't think it's a now thing. I think waiting, especially since you're healthy, I would probably wait. The only reason that would be interesting to potentially roll that over right now would be to potentially slowly convert some of this money into the Roth because you're kind of heavy on the pre-tax retirement, right? And you've got some nice money in the Roth. Um, I, I'm I think that I know that you want the income. I don't know if this makes a ton of sense to start annuitizing this second. First of all, you make a lot of money. You're in a high tax bracket. So essentially what might be smarter to do would be to wait until you're 65. And if at that time you can always, even if you can't roll it over, then you can start receiving income. Maybe that's something that you do, that you wait to annuitize this. I mean, I know you want to retire at age 62. Is there any leeway in that? Is there any, I don't know. I have a few questions on this one. I'm going back and forth in my head and I'm all over the place. I'm sorry in this response. Okay, here's what I want to know. Number one, is 62 in stone? Number two, are there any other pensions that would become available? Number three, what is the spending need that you have? How much money do you need on an ongoing basis? The reason to annuitize this now would be that you would be able to annuitize it, have some income right now, even though it's taxed at a higher rate, but it could hold you until maybe your full retirement age for Social Security. And then maybe you don't have to dip into any of this money. And so maybe that's the right way to do it. But I do have some more questions. And I would like to try to make this a smart decision for you, but also a decision that takes into account what your real needs are. So if you could follow up with this and let us know what your spending needs are, maybe I'd have a different opinion. Right now, I'm leaning towards either rolling it over right now and then slowly converting it into a Roth, or potentially annuitizing it right now, using that the bridge until your full retirement age when you can better maximize your Social Security benefit. I hope that's helpful. Boy, it's a mouthful, huh, Mark? There are a few pieces missing. I thought I had the answer right to begin with. As it turns out, not so much. Anyway, um, follow up with us, please. You're listening to Jill on Money. If you have a question, please feel free to email us, askjill@jillonmoney.com, or if you're on our website at jillonmoney.com, all sorts of stuff there. Go check out the new furry fan club and send us your picture, jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the show that is holding your hand through the COVID pandemic. It has been a rough 4 or 5 months for everybody. I just want everyone to just take a deep breath. I know those of you who are itching to go do something, try to sit still. Those of you who are more like me and Mark, happy to be ensconced into a safe place, stay there. We're with you. We're not going out anywhere. Mark, what would it take for you to want to go into a restaurant right now in New York City? Right. Mark says it's not going to happen right now. How about sitting on a sidewalk in a restaurant? Would you do that? Okay. Mark says that no, he would not do that because there's too many stupid people around, which I love that about him. Okay. Now, let us get back to your questions. If you have a financial question, if you have a career question, if you have I don't know, just any sort of general money related issue bubbling up as you take your daily walks, as you get out there and keep your physical distance from everybody, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Here is a note from Nicole, who says that she's enjoying the podcast. Thank you so much. As a longtime listener, I thought I'd reach out to you before taking the next step with my current situation. Okay, here's what the situation is. My father, who is currently legally separated from my stepmother, is in the midst of selling an inherited property. Okay. He does not have a retirement, and this was essentially meant to be his retirement. My understanding is that my stepmother is not legally entitled to any of that money in the divorce. I'm aware of caveats, but this seems to be protected per his lawyer. Oh, okay. That's good because I wouldn't necessarily know that. Okay, I need advice on whether I should advise him to do anything additional with the income from the sale of the property to protect it from her if possible. And what should my father do with the $383,000 he will receive from the sale to set him up for success? For background, my father's 59. He no longer works due to a disability. He likely will not return to the workforce. So, his only income in the foreseeable future, aside from this real estate proceeds and the income it could drive, is disability. So SSDI. Nicole says, I'm the power of attorney. I'm helping him sell the property. I feel great pressure to make sure the money is protected for his future. Oof, that's a lot. Um, well, first of all, I would talk to the lawyer about protecting the money. I think that's something that that's a legal issue, and again, I think that as long as the lawyer says that this is protected, the most important thing to do is to make sure your father doesn't commingle this with any joint funds, and that it's in a totally separate account. As far as what he should do with the money, I think you really do need to chat with an advisor. And I would probably recommend paying for the hourly rate for some advisor just to help you through this. And, I noticed from your email address, it looks like you have an address that is associated with a school in New York City. I don't know where your dad lives, but Mark, what I think we should do is send Nicole the contact information for that wonderful fee only advisor who is in the New York metropolitan area, and let's see if she can help out Nicole on an hourly basis. Because there's a lot of different aspects to this that I think are a little bit dangerous. For example, if this money is available, will it screw up your father's ability to, basically be in a nursing home? Is there some sort of trust that should be? And I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that there are people smarter than I am who can help him out. So that's what I would do. Okay, let's see. This is from TT. Hi, Jill and Mark. Thank you both for your hard work keeping the show going. I appreciate that your advice is applicable to a wide range of people, from novices to people buried in debt to people further along towards reaching their financial goals. I also love your direct, no nonsense approach. I'm wondering if you think it would be a good idea to draw money from my home equity line of credit as a way to increase my emergency cash on hand. I'm currently working, but making half of my usual salary. I'm still able to pay all of my bills and contribute to my 401k, and I have not had to dip into the emergency reserves. My emergency savings covers 4 months of expenses. I know you recommend at least 6 months. So, should I draw from the HELOC to get to that number? Thanks so much, Terry. Terry, I don't think I would draw down. I would hate to start paying interest on a home equity line of credit, considering that you don't actually need the money right now. So what I might do is, see how things go. If you had to, I guess you could draw it down if you had a further reduction in your income. And maybe instead of drawing down that home equity line of credit, you might ease up a tiny bit on the 401k and put that money that you would have needed into the emergency reserve fund. Okay? Okie doke. Here we go. Question from Renee. I'm doing the happy dance because I just finished paying off my student loan even with a zero interest rate. Wow, that's fantastic. Congratulations, Renee. Now, I have two seasonal jobs and I also collect unemployment. With the added $600 a week of unemployment benefits, it pushed me over the limit that I reported to be on the Affordable Care Act. So I reported $14,000 for the year. I already have $1,800 in a Roth for the year. I'm looking for subtractions come tax time as I don't want to repay any ACA credits. Would it be wrong to start a health savings account and max that out the 3550 and put $4,200 in a traditional IRA for subtractions? I'm going to be turning 40 in a couple of weeks too. Renee. I don't think you'll be able to do a health savings account unless you have a high deductible plan. So that would take that off the table. Will the $4,200 in a traditional IRA take you down below what you need? If that's possible, then yeah, you could do that. I mean, one thing to consider is that the Affordable Care Act credit is on a sliding scale. It is for people who are, it's based on the poverty guidelines. The subsidy range, it's a range, is $12,490 for an individual up to $49,960 for an individual. So that means that you wouldn't have to necessarily give back the entire credit. So I would keep an eye on like what my real goal is here. And I would be a little bit remiss in saying that, look, if you've made too much money for this credit and you don't deserve the whole credit. I understand you want to protect it, but maybe it would be a good idea for you to also try to sock some money away for liquidity purposes since you are on unemployment. So I will put that out there as your possibility. Okay, so when we return, we will answer more of your questions. This is Jill on Money. And during the break, why don't you hop on over to our website, Jill on Money, and there you can subscribe to our podcast. You could also get it on Apple or Stitcher or Spotify, radio.com, Google Play, wherever you find your favorite podcast. Okay, we'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that is attempting to hold your hand through this horrible pandemic. If you've got a financial question, a career question, insurance, estate, whatever it is, why don't you give us a holler? Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com, askjill@jillonmoney.com, and we would be delighted to help you out. Okay, We okay, we just got a slew of questions from folks who read an article that I wrote on it was my syndicated column for Tribune. So this was essentially a column about cash, okay? Now, the thing that's interesting about that is that as I called it the beauty of cash, and it's actually on the website. At the end of this, I talked about FDIC insurance and the Securities Investor Protection Corporation, or SIPC. Now, all of a sudden, I feel like everyone's lost their minds because they're like, well, wait a minute. I'm only covered up to this, that, and that of it. Okay. And so I was maybe thinking that people were kind of over their anxiety levels around these things, but they're obviously not. So let us get to your questions around SIPC. And this is from Greg. He said, I was listening to the podcast. I heard you mention SIPC and the protection it affords. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on this scenario. Here's the deal. Greg has money. Okay, let's just see. He's got $1.1 million in a brokerage account at Charles Schwab. Then he's got a bunch of money in his Fidelity 401k, a bunch of money in his wife's Fidelity 401k, an IRA at Ameriprise, another IRA at Vanguard, and then another brokerage account. Okay, so he's got a whole bunch of money. So we've got money and all over the place. Okay, he's got all this money, and he goes, well, I don't understand what has to happen. Okay, just to be clear, can everyone take a breath? What SIPC is protecting against is the failure of the organization that's holding your accounts. So that would presume your fear is that Charles Schwab goes broke, Fidelity goes broke, Ameriprise goes broke, and Vanguard goes broke. Completely ridiculous assumptions, but let's just say they're not all going broke at once, and it will not be allowed to happen. Talk about too big to fail. So retirement accounts this is all of your money. I don't believe that, in this case, so if your wife has a Fidelity 401k and there's 400,000 in it, it's all covered by SIPC. So the two accounts that you need to worry about right now is the $1.1 million in your brokerage account and your own 401k at Fidelity with 700,000 in it. SIPC would protect if Charles Schwab were to fail, you would be protected up to $500,000. Okay. Half of a money market or cash accounts, half in other assets. Same thing with your Fidelity. But can we be really clear that this is a ridiculous, crazy scenario that you are now contemplating? First of all, Schwab's not even, and Fidelity are not they're not trading with leverage. There's never been a fear that even in the financial crisis, these are not actually companies that we were worrying about going broke. So I get it. Everyone's all nuts, but please stop. Stop. Okay? This is from Eileen. She says, my husband and I are 49. We have $500,000 in my 401k, 120 in a traditional IRA, 160 in Roth IRAs. Our house is paid off. We've got 25 grand liquid in the bank. That's awesome. They want to retire in 10 years, which is already, I'm going to tell you it's too early, but let's see. My main concern is that we will be unable to keep our employer-based medical plan when retiring, and we'll have to get something until Medicare kicks in. Our plan is to have $1 million saved so that we could count on earning at least 5%. Where are you getting 5%, Eileen? Come on. You can't count on 5%. You're retiring too early. Before I read this whole question, let me just get down to the bottom line. You cannot afford to, based on what you're telling me, you cannot afford to retire in 10 years. You will not have enough money. That is me popping your bubble, okay? She says, I said you should have $200,000 cash available when you retire. No, you should have 1 to 2 years of your living expenses in cash when you retire, okay? Now, Eileen says her financial advisor recently suggested that because of the CARES Act, I should take $100,000 out of my 401k, which, oh my God, which he feels he could grow at 5 to 6%, and we would pay the taxes over the next 3 years. Do not do this. This is not a financial advisor. This is terrible advice. Also, by the way, You cannot count on earning 5% a year. So unless I'm missing something, is there a pension you're not telling me about? Remember, if you have $1 million that's in assets, that your liquid assets, let's just call it for you guys, you have basically most of your money will be in retirement accounts that are pre-tax. So let's say you have $1 million in pre-tax accounts. It means that you don't have a million. You have more like 750,000 because you have to pay tax on it. So whatever it is that you think you can earn on that, put it out of your head and now say, I can take 3% of my post tax and count on that to live on. That's what you can do. And if you can't make it, then you're going to have to rethink your retirement age. I have a good sense from reading this email. You cannot retire when you want to retire. Mark, I am just Debbie Downer, aren't I? Dashing the hopes of but she doesn't have enough money. Why should we mess around with this? Mark thinks I'm tired of cooking. I am tired of cooking, but more to the point, I'm worried that people have unrealistic expectations about their ability to retire. So, frankly, I don't think that everyone has to work forever, but something's going to have to give here because I can almost guarantee, based on what you're telling me, you don't have enough to retire. And in 10 years, I don't think you're going to be there. So, that said, let's try to take a deep breath, Jill. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a deep breath. When we come back, we're going to answer more of your questions, and I promise I'm going to be the nicer, more empathic Jill when we come back. I'm going to have a little coffee during the break. Okay, we'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and this is the program that is attempting to have the host, be a little bit nicer. I feel like I was a little cranky on that last response, and I apologize for that. It's just, there's a certain amount of worry that I carry on behalf of all of you. I worry sometimes that you are perhaps more optimistic than you ought to be. I worry sometimes that you are falling prey to the stock market's rise and not thinking about your own financial situation in a clearer way. So I apologize if that was a little cranky in the previous response. If I missed something, maybe I have. Maybe you don't spend any money and you can retire. But if you're 49 years old, I would encourage you not to be running your retirement numbers at age 59. I would, in fact, really encourage you to run the numbers in the first place and be sure that you don't have to make some big changes in your life because it's harder to do that down the line. All right. It's easier to save now or to wait. And certainly if you're fully employed, boy, it's a great time to really start socking away some money. Okay. All right. If you've got a financial question, ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. See, Mark, I'm a little more calm. I'm a little more centered. Everything's okay. Austin writes, the subject, is a refi a better alternative to an annuity? Okay. Hi, Jill. I listen daily. I wish the show was longer. Austin, do you wish that? I wish that too, except that I have this other job. Oh, sorry. I love seeing if I know the answer before you give it. It's my personal morning game show. I love that. Okay, Austin says, we are married filing jointly for 40-something years. We're 66 years old and have, per several models, plenty of money with all the bases covered to live to infinity and beyond. Hey, see, there's somebody who's done the work, okay? Here is my favorite acronym that I've ever seen. Mark, we got to start using this. 2 million invested in GPOM. Don't look up the stock signal. It's called the giant pile of money. love that. 2 million bucks, giant pile of money, 70% stocks, 30% bonds. 2 million invested in IRAs and Roths, slowly converting IRAs to Roths. 4,000 a month in pension and social security, which is about 2 grand each. We each make a pittance of gig income teaching, and we've got $550,000 remaining on a mortgage of a $1.8 million condo. We pay ourselves 10 to 12 grand a month from the giant pile of money. Less now in COVID times. We aren't traveling or going out. Social Security will increase our monthly income by about $3,000 per month at age 70. Woohoo! Okay. I'm an 80/20 stock bond risk kind of guy. We are in Fidelity managed accounts. They advise to take less risk with age. I insist if I put all my eggs in the S&P 500 my whole life and just ignored it, I'd be way better off. Richer, bigger condo, boat, airplane, big deal. So I compromise, and the giant pile of money is more like 70/30 since we live off of it. Okay. My great idea of the day, which I seek your opinion on, is did I mention my good Fidelity advisors gently suggest putting some of the giant pile of money into an annuity to generate guaranteed income? I hate annuities and bonds. Here's the damn question, he says. If I can refi the $550,000 condo balance from 3.8% to below 3% and save $500 a month, isn't this as good or better than a dumb annuity and somewhat clever? I'd do a 30-year, let the kids pay it off from selling it post our demise. Good chance we'll make it till 90. Do you guess I'm an engineer? Ha ha. Best class I ever took in college was engineering economics, where we had to do every freaking finance math problem that exists. Ah, God, he's so funny. Okay. He also loves I won't give you the calculation, but it's very funny. He put a formula in there for compounded interest, which is great. Okay, here's what I think. I think you're being clever by a little bit. Um, why do you need to refi? I mean, I guess you could refi. You could save $500 a month, especially if the cost is low, and they'll let you refi based on the fact that you have some income. But why even do that? Who cares? It seems to me that, you've got plenty of money and there's no reason why you need an annuity and there's no reason to refi. Am I missing something? I don't think so. I think you've been clever enough, which is you've saved a bunch of money. You've done a fantastic job saving that money. And now we're just, it's sort of like silliness. So I'm not sure that you would actually be I don't think you'd be much better off. And there is a cost to the refi. So I definitely wouldn't do an annuity. It makes no sense to me at all. And I would only do the refi if it were compelling and you could, certainly, as you said, you're going to stay in this. It won't matter. I'm not even sure you have to do that, but it's a pain in the neck to refi anyway. So I would just maybe you could do that, but I wouldn't feel like you had to do that. Okay. And before we go to the break, we got a question about how can I check the financial soundness of a bank? What do you want to find out? Is everyone all of a sudden worried that banks are going broke? They're not all going broke. You can go. I don't know how to respond to this. What are you worried about? Let's start with that, and then maybe I can help you out. So let's go from there. Give us a holler. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We're going to head to the break and then do maybe one quick question when we return. Okay? We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's Jill on Money, where we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. You get it? It's virtual. We're not in a studio, actually. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? All right. If you've got a financial question, you know the deal. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. This is a note from Jim, who writes, Ms. Schlesinger, very formal. Just call me Jill, guys. I read your column every Monday in the Chicago Tribune. I think your column was a week ago or so was on taxes, and you said the IRS said refunds were in the mail. Well, I mailed my return the 2nd of April and I haven't gotten my refund. I've gone to where my refund and it's useless. My question, is there any place within the IRS system where I can call to get a human who can tell me what the status is and when they will proceed with the refund? I appreciate any information you can give me. Okay, Jim, put this in the category of you're not in as bad shape as you could be because people who mailed their returns back in February and March still have not gotten their refunds. So the answer is they're backed up. The IRS sent out an advisory basically saying anyone who sent a paper return is kind of screwed right now. You just have to wait. And the idea that you could get a human on the phone at the IRS in good times was probably a reach. Now it is simply impossible. The IRS itself says, do not call. Remember, they are only slowly bringing staff back to the IRS. So I'm sorry to say the check is in the mail and there's really nothing you can do to speed it up. Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? File electronically, Mark says that's the way to go. Of course it is, but he's already done it this year this way. So sorry about that, gang. All right, it's Jill on Money. We got a great guest for next hour, so stay tuned. And if you have some time during the break, just hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome back. It's hour number 2 of Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Policy Genius virtual studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. Well, I am delighted to find this interview that we actually had recorded a while back, but I don't know, COVID got in the way of everything, frankly. And so this got lost in the shuffle. Mark, I shouldn't say, not me, not we, Mark was smart enough to say this is an awesome thing for us to run right now. And so what we've decided to do is to air this interview. Again, we previously recorded it with John Schwartz. He wrote a book called This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order. He is a New York Times writer, longtime journalist. And so what I think is really interesting is that he's the kind of guy who's been covering this stuff and talked about it. And what we always find, whether it's doctors or lawyers, personal finance, economic reporters, anything, we give short shrift to our own stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. We have the entire hour devoted to John Schwartz. Here's our first segment. What's your best financial decision you've ever made?
Starting a 401k when I got my first real job.
And you did that because you knew you should, or because the employer said, you got to do this, or your boss says, hey, kid, put some money in there?
My employer made it available. I'd been waiting like a year to be able to do it. And friends said, you are crazy not to do this. All these things came together. And at that very moment, I also got a big raise. And so all of a sudden I had a raise so that the money could go away and I wouldn't notice. Those three things together, maybe 4 now, made it possible to start it with 10% of my income. I didn't have to work up incrementally, do the ratchet, any of that. And then I kind of forgot about it.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. All right. So you've written a book. It's called This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order. I loved this book. And I loved it because it is raw, it is emotional, it is honest, and I think it must have been incredibly difficult to write. So talk to me about why you felt like you had to put this down on paper. You wrote an initial article about how you were essentially a financial F-up.
Exactly right. And I did that. It came out in 2015, and it laid out how poorly I had managed my finances, how little attention I'd paid to it, and how the nervousness about it was creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And it was time for me to at least take a look and see where I stood for retirement. In looking at doing a full book, I realized I had to think about and then write about my entire financial history and what a screw-up I'd been in a lot of ways, and then educate myself to be able to deal with this stuff. And it's not just, am I ready for retirement, but it's also, you're 58 years old and you don't have a will yet. What's wrong with you?
I know. It's so, and we hear these questions because we take calls to the show and we get these questions all the time. And I guess that when you looked at all of that, it takes a real ability to get honest with yourself. It's like you're going to therapy and you can't lie to the shrink. And so, but you're sharing your therapeutic sessions with us.
It's true, but how else do I explain to people what they need to do except by showing what I should have done? How else do I show you that this is worth doing without showing what I did wrong? And, I did a lot of things wrong. I mean, we lost an apartment.
Let's go back and tell your story of origin. First of all, where are you from?
I'm from Galveston, Texas.
You're a Jew from Texas?
I'm a Jew from Texas. There are many of us.
Kinky Friedman.
Kinky Friedman. I've met him.
Okay. So you grew up in Texas. You went to a decent high school?
Decent public high school. Ball High School, Galveston. Go Tornadoes.
Okay. And then you go off to college.
University of Texas at Austin.
And then what happened? What'd you do in college? Like, were you like partying? Were you a studier?
I was a pretty good student. Graduated with honors and all that stuff, but I just fell into the social life there. I loved it. I got to be editor of the school newspaper.
Oh.
I went to law school there, basically for lack of a plan. I finished my undergraduate. I found the academic stuff just fun. When I graduated at the end of 4 years, I went back for another year to take classes that I hadn't been able to take because I was afraid of them. So that extra year, that year of going back in was just really important for me. And then I went on to law school.
So wait a second. Did you tell me about the cost of college for an in-state kid who gets into UT Austin?
This is why I could do all this. University of Texas at Austin in the 1970s, back when we rode our dinosaurs to class, cost less than $200 a semester. Less than $200 a semester. When I got into law school, my books cost more than my tuition.
Oh, my God. So you go to law school and you graduate, and what do you do? And you don't have any debt. You don't have any debt when you graduate, right?
I have no debt. And my second year of law school, I've become editor of the Daily Texan, the student newspaper at the University of Texas. And my mornings and early afternoons are spent at the law school, hanging out with people who are going to be lawyers. And then in the afternoon and evening, into way late at night, I'm hanging out at the Daily Texan, and I'm trying to write my editorials, and we're dealing with all the craziness of student journalism. And I have this bifurcated life. It becomes pretty clear to me that not only am I having more fun at night than I am in the morning, but that I'm more like the people I'm with at night than I am with the people in the morning. There's nothing wrong with lawyers. Two of my brothers and my father, they're all lawyers. I love lawyers. But it sort of dawned on me that I might not be a very good lawyer, and I could be a pretty good journalist. And so I've got this thing weighing in the balance. And I go to Jeanne, who is my girlfriend from the week before. Well, I met her the week before her classes started in freshman year. And now we've been together like 6 years, 7 years. And we're planning to get married. And I said, look, I'd really like to try being a reporter. I'd like to try being a journalist for a while. I don't know if it's going to work, but would you mind if we did this? Let's give it a couple of years. At the end of 5 years, if I've got a real job and a dental plan, then I'd like to stick with it. And if not, then I'll still have the bar card. And, I can do divorces or whatever it is I'm capable of doing as a lawyer. And she said, are we going to move? Because she was ready to leave Austin by then. We'd been there a lot of years. And she was interested in going to New York, and I was interested in going to New York. And so we came to an agreement. And we could do it because there was no debt.
Right.
We could do it because you could just take a shot.
We'll be back with our interview with John Schwartz in just a moment. If you've got a chance, why don't you hop onto our website, JillOnMoney.com. There you can check out our resource section, and you can also buy my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. If only John Schwartz had that book. Okay, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are delighted that you are with us this day. Remember that if you missed any part of the program, you can always hop onto the website, JillOnMoney.com, and there you just click the Listen tab. So easy. We are in the midst of an interview with John Schwartz. He is a journalist, a reporter for the New York Times. He's covered so many different things, but he wrote a book called This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order. And it's funny. I was really intrigued by this because, this is a little bit of the preamble to my own book, which is, why do smart people do dumb things with their money? But often we'll talk to some of you or some, other folks who have run into big, bad financial problems. And it is almost as if you can kind of skate by for a while as long as everything is just right. But as soon as there's like almost an original sin, that original sin can crop up and create all sorts of problems. Now, for John Schwartz, it was a disaster purchasing a cooperative apartment in New York City. Now, this was a very specific and weird case, so it's just unique, okay? But what is not unique is that you can make this one bad decision, and because you have not built a firm financial foundation, that decision can really take you down a terrible, terrible path. So here is more of our interview with John Schwartz. So you go to New York, and what's your first job?
I got a job at Newsweek.
All right. Let's talk about like how the financial situation starts to evolve. What is the original sin in your mind of what happened in your financial life? So you obviously used a 401k, so you did that. What happened that kind of derailed a lot of your efforts in those earlier years?
Besides living in New York, which I don't know if you know this, it's an expensive place.
I've heard.
Yeah, it can be.
I've heard.
Yeah. But aside from that, because lots of people live in New York and do well, we decided that we needed to get an apartment. We needed to buy. And all I knew was you can't go wrong in real estate. And so I looked around, and we looked at a lot of places, and we bought an enormous apartment in Washington Heights.
Which was, by the way, very edgy for you to do at that time. What year is that?
I think we're talking about 1987 or 88.
Okay.
And we fell in love with it. And we had good neighbors and some bad neighbors. But it was a great place, and it seemed like a bargain. We paid $136,000 for a 3-bedroom apartment in Manhattan.
Got a mortgage.
Got a mortgage and started paying it, and it was something that we could afford within our budget. We looked at what we could afford and what the mortgage would cost, and it would have been fine, except that I then got a job at the Washington Post in 1993.
Okay. So 5 years later.
5 years later, I'm still in this apartment.
And you guys are making your bills okay. You're putting money into your 401k. You're paying the mortgage.
We even have savings.
You have some savings. Your wife's working or not working?
Jeanne is working.
Uh-huh. So you got a good combined income and cash flow's good.
Mm-hmm.
All
so
right.
we're doing fine.
Okay.
But I got a job in Washington, and it was a chance of a lifetime to go work at the Washington Post, and I desperately wanted to do it. And so we moved, and along with the fact that you can't go wrong in real estate, you can always rent.
Yes, you can.
You can get a manager. It's going to work great.
Yeah.
You
so
just
you
get
just
tenants.
collect the money.
So we got somebody helping us manage it, and
is the rent paying the mortgage? Are you
nowhere
covering
near.
not even, what percentage of the mortgage should you cover? What did the rent cover?
I think it was a little better than half.
Okay, but if at that time were you considering selling and you said, "Oh my God, we can't get our money out," and that's why you decided to rent, or was it, "Oh, we're just going to collect rent and rent's so great and that's good. We don't want to give up our New York."
No, we wanted to sell it. We figured it was time to sell.
Mm-hmm.
The 3-bedroom apartment was feeling small to us, and the neighborhood was loud, and we were sort of moving away from apartment living, and at the same time, the building was going through. It was going to be a co-op conversion. We were buying co-ops.
Yeah.
But the number of apartments that had been converted to co-ops was low. Mm-hmm. And it was so low that banks would not issue a mortgage.
Oh, so you couldn't sell it. You really were stuck.
We were locked.
Oh, brother.
And I told real estate agents, we'll take a bath. Just, and they
Get
said,
me out.
Yeah, and they said, you will not find a bank that will loan your buyer the money. They said, well, can we have somebody assume the mortgage? They said, that's not going to happen. And so bit by bit, and very quickly, the people at the Post had said, we know it's hard to sell an apartment. We don't expect it to happen quickly. So we're going to give you X number of months of supplement. So we were getting something like $900 a month.
Uh-huh.
And so between the rent we were getting and the supplement, we were okay.
Okay.
Except we can't sell, and then the supplement runs out.
Ugh.
The savings are being drained about the time that the tenant stops paying. And so we're now out of savings and desperate, and the guy won't leave. The guy, I get him on the phone. He says, you can't get me out of here. I know my rights. And it's a very ugly time because if I need a lawyer to help get him out, the lawyer costs money.
Now, you need like a frickin' Rocco to go knock on the door and make it pay a visit. I used to know people like that in Rhode Island who would do that just for fun. So how long did you have to suffer with this apartment?
It was the better part of a year. Mm-hmm. I finally found a lawyer who, good lawyers are therapists. And the lawyer said, this is going to hurt, but what you need to do is offer this guy to forgive the debt if he will leave. Mm-hmm. He's now into you for thousands and thousands of dollars. But if you offer not to fight, he will go. And he did.
And then what happened to the apartment?
Well, then we found another tenant who looked good. Again, I'm doing the things that I think I'm supposed to do. I'm doing credit checks.
Right.
And these people look good. The last guy looked good.
Right.
And it was a very nice couple. And they were in for about 3 or 4 months, and then she calls me and she says, my husband has left and I can't pay.
Ay, ay, ay.
And it happens again. So we're stuck. And my father-in-law, who is a law professor who knows real estate, says, you got to file for bankruptcy. You are being dragged down by this apartment.
Right.
And you can get clear of this. And there's no shame in it.
Okay, and at that point, what were the assets? You had no bank account, but you had your 401k protected from bankruptcy.
Exactly right.
Did you own a home in D.C.?
We were in the process of buying a home in D.C., and about the time we were considering all this, we were able to find, again, a wonderfully cheap place in outside of D.C. in the little town of Tacoma Park. We found a place. Again, we tend to take distressed properties, the places that people don't like, and we tend to fall in love with them. And that's what we did. We found this place that was really a wreck, and the previous owners had sort of done a half-assed way of trying to start fixing it up, but they hadn't gotten there yet. You know, my boy Sammy, we'd walked him through to show it, and he said, "Dad, please don't buy this place. It smells."
Oh,
I said, "Sammy, I'm sorry. I love it. You know, I knew what was there, and so we found a place at an amazingly cheap price, and we were able, even in our distress, to put down a down payment. So we were buying the new place.
So, in other words, you waited to declare bankruptcy until you had the house, right?
We waited to seriously consider bankruptcy, but right, we wanted to have a house first.
Right. Because otherwise your credit is trashed. You won't qualify for the mortgage, right?
We won't be able to buy a house.
Okay.
We wouldn't be able to buy a house for at least 7 years, and the income was still there.
Okay, we'll get back to our interview with John Schwartz in just a moment. While you are on the break, go and subscribe to our podcast. It is daily, and it is called Jill on Money. Right now, you can just go to Apple or Stitcher or Spotify or radio.com or Google Play. Subscribe and download. You'll hear us every single day, 7 days a week. I swear, it just happened. All right, we'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are in the midst of a pretty long and great interview with, if I do say so myself, with John Schwartz. John is a reporter at the New York Times. He wrote a book called This Is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order. So in the last segment, we talked about how John really made this disastrous decision about a co-op in New York City. In this segment, we talk about his potential bankruptcy and where that might have taken him, and how, honestly, a stroke of good fortune helped him avoid bankruptcy. So here's more of our interview with John Schwartz.
You're making money. Now you declare bankruptcy. Yes or no?
No.
Why?
I went to talk to a bankruptcy lawyer. Now that I've been told you have to declare bankruptcy, you just have to file. You don't have any choice. I go to the first bankruptcy lawyer, who says, I feel for you, but the asset level that you're at really isn't what I deal with. In other words, I wasn't failing big enough for this lawyer.
You're too poor for me.
I'm too poor to fail.
We need richer bankrupt people.
Exactly right.
Uh-huh.
Your assets are not attractive. And so, I take this because I don't fear failure.
Yeah.
All that. I can deal with it. And she has the recommendation of a second bankruptcy lawyer who deals with people more at
real poor people.
My level.
Yeah.
And I get him on the phone, and he says, "Okay, I see your situation. You don't need to file for bankruptcy. What you need to do is default on your apartment. You need to stop paying on the apartment. Let the bank take it back. You can offer to do all kinds of things, and to make it easier. But really, you're going to lose the apartment. And once that's over, I think you can get through this without filing for bankruptcy." And this sounds crazy to me, but he seems like a smart guy, and he's extremely reassuring. And some months later, we lose the apartment. And I go back to him and say, "Do I have to file for bankruptcy now?" And he said, "No, but call me if anything else happens." And then we get the letter from the people that assumed the debt. And they're at us for the deficiency on the apartment, which is about $40,000 at this point, what's left. And I call the guy and say, "I've got to file for bankruptcy now, right?" And he says, "No, not really. What you need to do now is bargain with these people and see how low they'll go, because they didn't spend $40,000. They just have the right to get $40,000. And if you go back to them with a lower amount, they will accept it." And again, come back with a number. They come back with a number. And I don't remember whether it's $10,000 or $12,000, but in there, we've got a deal.
And how'd you get the 10 or 12 grand?
My parents loaned it to me.
All right, good. I love parents who do that.
It's a great thing, and they helped us out, and we paid them back. But it was an emergency, and they wanted the help.
Okay, so at that point, let's push this story ahead because like that's an unlucky situation.
It's an unlucky situation.
That's not the worst financial screw up in the world. I mean, if this thing didn't have that weird co-op issue, you would have sold it. Even if you lost the 10 or 12 grand originally, you could have absorbed it and moved on. So you got unlucky. And what happened after that? Now you're in D.C.
We've got credit card debt.
How come?
Well, when you lose a boiler, you can't really say, gee, we'll fix that when we get to it.
Yeah.
And so, so those thousands of dollars go on the card. But also, guess what? The kids need orthodontia. And the expenses of life pile up. Mm-hmm. And it's not like we're taking crazy vacations. We've never taken big vacations. Life hits you, and I've got a paycheck coming in. Jeanne has stopped working because the 3 kids need a lot of managing.
But you're still contributing to your 401k at the Post.
Right, because once I get to the new job, for one thing, I'm still with the Washington Post Company, and so it's the same deal, and I keep it at 10%, and I don't mess with it. I did dip into the 401k to pay the down payment on the new house.
So you took a loan?
I took a loan out of the 401k.
Okay.
But beyond that, I just continued to put that 10% away.
What's the next critical level?
Between the orthodontia and home repairs, we start to get foundation cracks in the house. We need to do huge amounts of work to deal with a wet basement. And all of it is just piling on the debt in ways that are completely unmanageable. At which point, I get a job offer from the New York Times.
In New York?
In New York.
Okay.
Which means I have to move again.
Mm-hmm.
But this time, I'm in a house that we actually might be able to sell. We're able to sell it for nearly double what we paid for it.
Credit card debt be gone.
We wipe out the credit card debt. We pay off the orthodontist. We, all that.
Put a few shekels in the bank.
We have a little something in the bank. We move to New York. We find a house. I buy a car with cash.
You're living large.
It's fabulous.
So you moved to the suburbs?
And we moved to the suburbs.
Because you said, got to have public school, good public school, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly right.
Uh-huh.
And we find the town of Millburn, New Jersey, which is lovely. Mm-hmm. And the only problem is that all the houses are too expensive. And we deal with a relocation specialist company, which leads us to a very good realtor who knows this town of Millburn and Maplewood and the sort of New Jersey towns. And she asks us what we think we can pay, and I've sort of figured out, okay, if we get a mortgage at this level, we can probably make the bills.
Okay.
And I say that is 400 and under.
Okay.
But really...
What year are we in?
We are in 2000.
Okay.
And she starts taking us around. The houses that she's showing us are at 450. And I said, you're not listening. I told you what our limit is. And she said, John, you're not going to find a house that meets your standards at under $400,000. And I said, Arlene, you have no idea how low my standards are.
So did you find one?
I asked her to hand me the MLS sheet she had printed. This is 2000, so she's printed out the multiple listing service reports. I go through, and I now have sorted from cheapest to most expensive. And the cheapest one says, not a drive-by, which is a signal to me that this is
a crap house.
So ugly. Mm-hmm. It's ugly from the outside, probably ugly on the inside. And I say, let's try this one.
How much?
$329,000.
Oh, I like that number.
It was a wonderful number. It was an astonishingly ugly house.
All right. What'd you end up buying?
I ended up buying that house.
I love that. You bought the ugly duckling.
We bought the ugly house.
Okay, it's Jill on Money, and we'll get back to our interview with John Schwartz in just a minute. During the break, what can you do? You can just hop on to JillOnMoney.com and check out the resource section, rich and filled with great information. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are still interviewing our friend John Schwartz. He wrote a book that is called This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order. Now, he's a reporter at the New York Times, and the idea for this book gained some ground after John pretty bravely exposed himself. And I think that sometimes putting your story out there, it is very brave to do, especially for someone like him. And I wonder if, he were in a different field, whether he would have just muddled along. Maybe he just would have been one of you calling a radio show anonymously. But, sometimes taking that first leap, whether it's calling this show or reaching out to us, sending us an email, calling a friend, having a conversation, for him, it was very public, but it can really start you at least getting to the point where you can create a plan, where you can come to terms with what's going on and be realistic about solutions. So here is more of our interview with John Schwartz.
How do you decide to write this article that is so exposing about your financial life?
Well, first of all, I was offered the assignment.
Oh, so you didn't pitch it. They came to you?
At the Times, we have special sections. And if you write for the special sections, you can get paid a little extra. And I love writing for the special sections because the people are wonderful. And there's money. And so I had been thinking, I really got to think about this. I really got to deal with some of these issues. And the retirement special section was coming up. And, the editor comes to me and says, would you like to do something? And I said, I need to look at this stuff. Will you give me the excuse to actually do this? Because even though I'm scared and lazy, if I'm going to get paid to do something, I'm going to do it.
Right. You know that, under deadline, you're going to do it.
Yeah. With a deadline, with a paycheck involved, with an editor who I will disappoint if I don't do it, then I'm going to go. And so in doing it, I realized that a certain amount of honesty was required. And I write first-person pieces for the paper. I mean, I do a lot of straight reporting. I write about climate change for the paper. I've written about infrastructure and law and all sorts of things. But when I write about personal finance, I often do first-person pieces because I try to make them funny. And I've been doing a quarterly piece for the mutual funds section that is funny or tries to be funny. And so this, to me, was in that vein. That I would try to go through the process of figuring out where I stood for retirement and explain why I was so late in coming to this. And to do that honestly, you've got to admit that you're kind of being an idiot.
So when you think about this process, talk about some of the emotions. I mean, you say, I had to be honest. You open the book with I'm an idiot. Talk about the emotions behind this. What is it that you think prevented you from really grabbing hold of this earlier? I mean, again, I feel like that first part of your life, which was this crazy apartment fiasco, is a one-off. But what was it in your emotional body that prevented you from grabbing hold of this after that?
I just don't like thinking about money.
Why?
My money. I'm scared of it.
What are you scared about? Let's talk about that. I'm interested.
I have never understood why, but I can explain that I am.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got that.
These things are braided in our minds. Look, my folks were terrific, and my dad took care of us, and my mother loved us. And so it wasn't like going through some terrible emotional crucible growing up, but we also just didn't talk about money.
How are your siblings same-ish around money? Do they have different money issues than you?
I think they're smarter about money than I am.
Again, the journalism thing.
I chose journalism. The two brothers who are lawyers are doing very well.
Yeah.
The younger brother, who's an ophthalmologist, is doing very, 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 very well. And he's very conscious of money stuff. I mean, he's really good with it, and has been smart on these issues his whole life.
Well, besides picking up the book and reading This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order, what is the message that you want? I mean, this book has a ton of stuff in there. There's real usable financial planning tips, tools, advice with humor. What is it that you want? What's your message?
The first message is that if you've never wanted to read a financial book because, like me, you're scared of money. You don't like thinking about money. You hate thinking about money. maybe this is a book you could read because I've sweetened it a little bit. I mean, I've tried to be funny, and I've tried to be not the ultra-competent financial maven who usually writes these books, but somebody who screwed up again and again. Mm-hmm. And I would want that person to read the book and, first of all, get something out of it in terms of, wait, I can do these things. I can get a hold of this. I can figure out where I stand. Look, I read the chapter on writing a will. It doesn't look that hard. All I have to do is do it. All those things I want people to do. I also would be very happy if they read through it and said, Schwartz is such a dumbass.
I didn't say that.
You did not say that out loud.
No, I didn't say that.
You didn't say it out loud. But if they say that to themselves and they say, well, I certainly wouldn't do it that way, I'll do it this way, and they've got a life plan. A negative example is good.
But I think what's interesting is that, we have great expectations of ourselves in this particular area, and we don't do a great job of talking about it. So what I really loved about it is that you're talking about it and you're being so open.
Okay, we're going to finish up our interview with John Schwartz right after we take a quick break. During that break, why don't you go to JillOnMoney.com and just bookmark it. Yeah, it'll be there for you. Always. So easy. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Policy Genius studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. Check out the end of this interview with John Schwartz. And remember, it's never too late to right your financial wrongs.
Many of the people that I encountered, people who call into the show and write us, have a lot of shame. They'll say, my parents were middle-class people who gave me a lifestyle that I can't give my kids. And I feel really horrible about that. So I think that this is a book and your message is just really important, that we don't need to have judgments. We've got plenty of people who shake their fists and fingers at us in life. John Schwartz, you're not that guy. You're kind of like the guy who says, it's okay. It's going to be okay.
And we're a club.
Yeah.
We're a fraternity of people who haven't done great, but we can do this.
Yeah, exactly. And we can try, and we can, and even if you're in your 40s and you're in your 50s, you can still do it. And that there's never a too late. Well, there is probably a too late. But, hopefully in your 40s and 50s, it ain't too late.
I started this in my 50s. I certainly would like to still be working. I love my work. I would like to still be working in 15 or 20, even 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm earning, shouldn't I still be saving? And if I'm doing all of that, shouldn't I be on track to, when I do stop working, live in comfort?
Right. And not luxury, but comfort is perfect. So we started the interview and I said, what was your best financial decision? So in retrospect of all the myriad of financial goof-ups that we all have, what do you think was the worst financial decision when you look back now?
It would be hard to beat buying that apartment.
The Washington Heights apartment?
The Washington Heights apartment.
Wonder what it's worth today.
Oh, I've checked. It's more than $1 million.
You know what? That's why you're crazy. You're nuts because you actually do check.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, this is what I do. This drives Jeanne crazy. But, I buy a pair of waterproof boots.
Yeah.
And then I check the prices I could have had.
Oh, you really are nuts. Mark's laughing at you.
Well,
he's giving you the
Mark is not wrong.
Thanks so much to John Schwartz. Check out the book. It's called This Is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order. And thank you all for listening. It's been our pleasure. If you have any questions, just send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Wear your masks, wash your hands, maintain your physical distancing. We'll talk to you next week.